The first time I really understood what flow meant, I was barefoot in salty sand, building a beach sculpture in Mexico alone in the sunshine. 2 hours seemed to disappear in moments as I gathered water smoothed scraps of painted tile and bright shells and arranged them into swirls and towers underneath the cliffs. Take a second here and ask yourself, when do you feel that amazing feeling where you are completely immersed in the thing you're doing and the rest of the world just falls away? When do you think your students do? We've all noticed the challenges our kids are facing right now in focusing their attention. They've got addictive technology, constant social FOMO, and a pretty much 24/7 feed of big world problems competing for their attention. So, how are they supposed to find their flow or even their focus? Today's guest, Angela Watson, has turned her attention carefully to this matter in recent years. She's here today to talk with us about how we can help our students find their way back to focus. And we all know how important that is right now. Welcome to the Spark Creativity Teacher Podcast, a podcast for English teachers looking for more. More creativity, more engagement, more joy, and no more scripted curriculum, lesson planning ruts, or boring book lists. I'm Betsy Potash, and I'm honored you're trusting me to help. You're not alone on this creative journey anymore. Well, welcome to the show, Angela. It's so great to have you back again.
Yeah, it's great to be back with you. I'm so excited to talk about this topic.
Yeah, it's a crucial topic. It's a huge topic. I think it's something that's really been on every teacher's mind and really has been for a while. And so to end the mystery, in a world full of distractions, the topic we're going to be diving into today is how we can help our kids focus and start to feel again like they can pay attention to something for a long time, that they can enjoy their learning again, and that they don't sort of constantly feel that they're looking for something more interesting, something better. So, you've been working on this so much. What triggered you to move into this area of education?
I think that this is something that all of us are struggling with. And I think it's a problem that's only increasing. And what I'm noticing is when we talk about this issue, we're often doing it in sort of silos, like it's just kids, or it's just the phone problem, or it's just happening in schools. But really, this is a human experience that we're having. We're all being bombarded with more information now than ever. And, the human brain just was not developed to take in this much information, respond to this information, focus on this much information. So I really think of this as like a life skill and something that everyone needs. And I've done so much work on mindset and productivity over the years that just seemed like the next natural transition. Having a growth mindset, a positive mindset, being able to reframe your thoughts and challenge your cognitive bias is all important. And knowing how to hack your productivity and being able to get things done is also important. But this really taps into the motivation piece. Why is it that we would rather lay on the couch and scroll through Instagram or TikTok than actually get things done? But then we feel awful afterwards and we wish that we had been more productive, And I
Yeah.
think with kids, a lot of it's just feeling like all of their friends are online and therefore they have to be perpetually online too. And if they're not always looking at their phones, then they're missing out. Someone may be saying something to them or about them that they don't know about. And so it's this sort of low level anxiety that we all have all the time, that there's things happening that we should be looking at and paying attention to, and it just creates this sense that we can't do deep work, we can't really focus. And in order for us to be successful in our lives, in order for us to be satisfied in our lives, to feel like we're doing meaningful things, we have to be able to focus our attention on the things we want to focus it on. And I think teaching that to kids is where the power is, because now we're removing the shame, we're removing the guilt. There's the idea that there's something wrong with you. Why don't you just put your phone away? Why don't you just do your work? It's not that simple for any of us. And so really looking at the root causes and the the larger issues and how this is affecting everyone, I think is sort of the path into this, instead of thinking of it as an individual problem that you should just overcome by having more willpower.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of us have watched The Social Network, right? And kind of like gotten
Mhm.
an idea about the addiction problem with devices. And we've read some of the research and we've seen some schools saying students can't bring their cell phones, students should be device free during the school day. There are rumblings all over the place, right? And I think almost every educator knows what a huge problem technology can be, as well as a huge asset. What are some of the other factors, do you think, for our kids in their lives that are kind of changing they the way they focus, the way they think about school, in this new era?
I'm really glad you asked about that, Betsy, because it's so easy to want to just jump right into what do we do? What's the action step? What's the solution? And I think a big part of the solution is understanding the problem and
Mhm.
realizing that this isn't just one thing. I mean, one of the things that I like to do, when I'm working with kids on this topic, is exploring the question of, if there were no phones, if phones didn't exist, would you be able to sit and concentrate on whatever you wanted to at any time? And when I ask either kids or adults this, they always sort of have the same answer. Or I'll ask you what your answer is, Betsy. Would you be able to concentrate perfectly with no phones?
Only if I thought the thing was really interesting.
Okay, now we're getting to a really good topic. Yes. If you're really interested in the topic and you're really in this state of flow, you're really focused on it, it's much easier to concentrate. But
Yeah,
getting rid of the phones doesn't make concentration magically something that we can do every single time. Certainly
yeah,
the phones can make it more challenging. But anything that we're more interested in would be more challenging. I mean, just if you were in class and you didn't have a phone, you'd just turn and talk to your friend or daydream out the window. Like, you would
yeah,
find something else, because the human brain is not designed to focus on one thing for hours and hours and hours. Like, this is sort of a normal human experience. So we need to understand that the phones are not the only thing. And when we try to scapegoat and find one solution, or one root problem, then we're missing something else. And I think it's important to just think about the cultural shifts over time and the way that time seems to have sped up, right? Like, there's more things happening. We're more aware of what's happening in the world. It used to be 100 years ago, you would only know what was going on in your local area. And if there was a, tornado or an earthquake on the other side of the world, you'd have no idea. It wouldn't impact you. Now we're bombarded with videos and images of, all kinds of crises happening all over the world all the time. And so I think that is a big distraction, as well as like trying to hold all of this information from the entire planet, instead of what humans really did for the vast majority of our existence on Earth, which is just being keyed into maybe a few dozen people in your local area, and
mm,
trying to have relationships with people, and interacting with people all over the world. This is a really difficult skill set too. That's very challenging for us. And it's not something we've ever had to negotiate as humans before. So there's a lot of rapid change right now and a lot of awareness of things, and that brings both positive and negative. But it's causing kids to be sort of carrying a lot more weight than
mhm,
previous generations did, because they were just simply not aware. Certainly, when I was 10 or 11, I had no idea about what was going on in, say, Sudan or Rwanda or anything like that. Like,
yeah,
I just, I wasn't hearing about these things. And so I just had less information to process. I was much more in my own little world. And our worlds have expanded, for good or for bad. So we need to really think about um, helping kids filter through things and dial into what is within their control, what's not within their control. Where is their energy best spent? What feels good to absorb themselves in? And what are the things that they can learn to tune out? And doing that intentionally, instead of just sort of drifting, which is how most kids are approaching it, because they haven't learned that skill yet, right? So it's just whatever's popping into their head, that's what they're going to think about, or that's what they're going to do. And realizing you can choose your thoughts, you can choose where to focus your attention. You can choose where to spend your energy, is a really empowering concept.
Yeah, yeah, I can feel the tone of the conversation shifting to something more
Mhm.
positive now. So we've got these kids, these great kids, right? They're up against a lot. They're dealing with a lot. They've got this cognitive load of the entire world at their fingertips, and also this sense that they could miss out on their social networks, on their friends, if they don't sort of check and like and comment. But there is a path for them out of this kind of swamp. So let's talk about this idea of flow, which is the center of kind of your new chapter of work here. You mentioned it a moment ago, how you can get into flow when you're doing something that you love. So tell us what flow really is and why it's maybe the solution.
So, flow theory was developed by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, who was a Hungarian American researcher. And this is not new. He first came up with this in the 1970s, as a matter of fact. And he studied people who were world class at what they did: surgeons, chess masters, athletes. And he found that all of them described a similar experience when they were doing their work. They lost track of time, they were totally absorbed in what they were doing. They were being challenged. They were leveling up their skills. They were not just relaxing. They were really working hard at something. And they all described it as this sense of like being carried away by a river, like you're just sort of flowing with it. You're not working hard. You're not swimming upstream. You're not fighting a current. You're sort of going with that flow. And Mihai Csikszentmihalyi has identified this as one of the optimal human states. It's one of the most rewarding states to be in, where you're so absorbed in what you're doing, you're not thinking about the outcome, you're not thinking about the reward, you're not, counting down until it's done so you can go do something else. All that exists is what you're doing in that moment. That state of total presence and total focus is so enjoyable. And I think we can all think of times when we've been in that state. And it really is ideal. And as I mentioned, it only works when we are actually learning something or struggling, improving a skill, or growing ourselves. So we can lose track of time, just on our phones easily, but you don't get that same sense of total immersion and feeling like you're leveling up your skills and satisfaction when you're done. Like, wow, that was an amazing use of time. I feel so good and I'm so much better at this thing that I love and care about. So that's sort of the difference. And that's what I think is so amazing about um, teaching students about flow, because they all have interests and passions that they care about and they have experienced this before. And school is really a perfect time to work on flow because we're constantly asking kids to level up their skills. And that is an ideal process for finding flow, practicing flow, experiencing flow. And I imagine like how much more engaging learning would be if kids understood this and were able to find their flow.
Mhm. Yeah, so it's lovely to imagine a whole classroom of our students being in the flow, picking up new skills that are vital to their creativity and their imagination and their understanding of the world, and using those skills and losing track of time because they're engaged. How do we get there? How do we start to lay the groundwork so that our students can find their flow?
Well, one thing that's important to note is that it's not realistic to try to expect flow in everything that we do. And research has shown that if you're experiencing flow in 20% of your work, that you will find more satisfaction in your work. You will increase your skills more quickly, and you will find that you're really enjoying what you're doing more. So that means 80% of your work. If we think about, as adults, that's paperwork, that's emails, that's all of this other stuff that feels less rewarding. But if you can find your flow for 20% of the school day, and I think a lot of teachers do, where, you are just engaged with the kids, they're doing group work, or maybe you're teaching them about something you're really passionate about, and you realize, whoa, like the class period's almost over. I didn't even realize that's flow. And we only need to experience that for 20% of the day. And it's the same thing for students. They're going to be doing a lot of low level tasks. They have to do testing, they have to review the homework, all kinds of things that are not, an optimal human state, right, for flow. But there should be something in there in that day in which they are totally immersed in a project or totally immersed in a group activity. And so what I think we want to do is introduce this concept to students, teach them how to experience, practice experiencing it, and explicitly letting them know we are going to try to find our flow on this activity. So, when they're copying down assignments or something, that's not a time when we're going to experience flow. But before we get into our groups and we start working on this next step of the project, I want you to know we're going to have 20 minutes. I am not going to interrupt you. I'm not going to pull you away from this task to clarify directions or anything. I want you to just be able to be totally absorbed in your work. And we're going to go through these steps that we've practiced together. And if you find that you're losing focus or you're not finding flow, that's okay. It takes about 10 to 15 minutes to get into a flow state. Sometimes a little less, it depends. I find that it's often less with kids because they tend to be more present oriented rather than past or future oriented like adults. So they can often get into their flow state a little bit faster. And of course, they tend to have shorter attention spans. So they might be able to find flow within 5 to 8 minutes and have a time period for flow lasting around 20 minutes for elementary, sometimes 30, 35 for at the secondary level. So give them that time period. Don't interrupt the learning and, really help them know how to find the flow and how to redirect themselves if they lose their flow or they can't get into it. So these are actually teachable skills that we want to tell kids about so they understand what the objective is and how to experience that for themselves. And the difference is normally, I think what we're doing in schools is the teacher is the one who's trying to get the kids engaged, right? Like we're trying to make a lesson so exciting or an assignment so engaging that, all the kids are just naturally fully immersed in it. And that's almost impossible to do because so much of this is a mental game. It's about you finding your own motivation, for tapping into your own interest, and for you knowing how to immerse yourself in something. It's so much more powerful. It's so much more doable. It's so much more realistic than trying to get the teacher to get everyone to that state on their own without ever even really telling the kids what the goal is. And it's also a lot more motivating than like, let's get this done or focus or get to work. We're going to find our flow, ready? And then really getting into it and reflecting on it afterwards.
Yeah, I like that. So it's a mindset shift from like teachers competing with distractions to teaching
Yes.
students how to acknowledge and move past their distractions to engage in something that they truly, want to engage in and know that they need to engage in and understand how to engage in. So like what are some of those grounding principles that we're going to teach our kids, to help them recognize when their fingers are like itching for their phone or they want to turn to their friend and be like, "What are you doing after school?" or tell a joke or whatever. Like, how do we take them from where they are to where we want them to be able to be?
So I think the most important thing that kids need to understand is that this is a lifelong struggle. Adults struggle with it too. It's not just kids.
Yeah.
And I think that's extremely important, particularly since kids see they don't have a lot of good role models for healthy phone use and
Mm.
for healthy focused work because the majority of them see the majority of adults in their lives constantly checking their phones, looking at their phones, attached to devices, not paying attention. I mean, how many kids have said, put your phone down, look at me, like pay attention to me? They want full focused presence from the people in their lives that they care about. And that tends to happen more with younger kids. By the time they're teens, they have their own phones and now they're absorbed in their own world. And they've now grown up in this era in which that's normal, in which your parent is staring at a device instead of watching you or paying attention to you. And we all know that a phone is much more absorbing than say a book or a newspaper. If a parent is reading a newspaper, they can glance up at you. If you're on your phone, like you can be totally oblivious to everything that's happening. And kids don't like that. They know how precious it is to have someone's full attention. So starting with this idea that it is a challenge and that we are so used to people being constantly not in flow, not in a focused state, not being totally present in the moment, that we don't even realize that this is not a healthy thing. And so being aware that adults also struggle with this is super important for kids to know. And it removes that aspect of being a hypocrite, right? Where it's like, well, why are you going to tell me to get my stuff done, but you're not paying attention, or you're on your phone, or you're doing your other things too. So we're saying, yes, we all struggle with this. This is hard for me too. I have to set good boundaries for myself. I have to create good habits. And there are times where I'm like, man, I just wasted a whole lot of time and didn't really get things done. So you want to come alongside students and really approach it as an experiment. And it's a lifelong experiment where you're going to be finding different strategies that work for you, and teach them about times that they have already experienced flow. So this is something that you can brainstorm with kids and say, when have you been so absorbed in what you were doing you completely lost track of time? And it may be, you're dancing, you're playing basketball, like maybe you're gaming, and talk about what those different experiences had in common. What were you doing during that time? What did that feel like afterwards? And ask them, do you think you could experience that in school? Is that something that you've ever experienced in class? And typically, at least a couple kids will say, yes, there was a time where we were doing this thing, and I was so sad when it was over. I wanted it to keep going.
Mm.
Or we were doing this one activity, and I could have just done that all day. That is flow. So we're sort of helping kids figure out, when have I experienced this feeling before? Have I experienced it before in school? And how could I experience that more in school? And introduce this idea that instead of just trying to force ourselves to get things done, for certain tasks, for a small percentage of our school day, we're going to try to aim for around 20% eventually of our class time together. We want to experience that state where you are totally focused on what you're doing. You're doing it for the flow. You're not doing it for the grade. You're not doing it for, to hurry up and get it done so you can move on to something else. You're actually enjoying it, and your attention is focused on it. And that's going to make learning so much more valuable for you. So this can be a foreign concept for kids as well as for teachers, but
Mm.
that's a lot more motivating hook than like, we just need to get this done, or, I have to give you this test or this assignment this week. This is something we have to do. Let's just do it.
Right.
There may be times where you have to say that, but we don't want the whole school day to be like that. When you present these opportunities as a chance to really enjoy yourself in school, to really enjoy learning, and to show that enthusiasm for it, and give kids a chance to talk about what worked, what didn't work. What made it hard to find flow in this activity? What could we do next time? Maybe you need to sit someplace different. Maybe you need to be over like by a window, or maybe you need to be with a group or not with a group. And really thinking about what are the things that help you find your flow, and just experimenting over time. Some days are going to be better than other days. And we know that as an adult too. Like sometimes we're able to really focus and get our tasks done. Sometimes we can't. Acknowledging that, normalizing it, and just increasing our skills in these areas over time. So as you can tell, it's a much more energizing way to approach focused attention, rather than just trying really hard, because trying really hard is exhausting and we run out of willpower. Flow is just so much more pleasurable.
Yeah. I read a book this year called Playful Productivity that
Mm,
kind of took a similar stance against the idea of trying to force yourself to do something through discipline. And it was sort of
yeah,
like, what is the point of that? Eventually, that always stops working. What if you try to find the joy in the thing that you're trying to do? What if you try to make it happy? If you try to make it pleasant for yourself? And I feel like flow is part of that when you're really um, uh, enjoying what you're doing. If you're completely focused on it and the world kind of drifts away, it becomes fun. Whatever you're doing, whether you're writing a poem or working on your genius hour project or coming up with a script for a documentary with your group or whatever, you're not worrying about anything else. And that's actually so much more pleasant.
that's right.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to ask you, I mean, for folks listening, they have a specific kind of focus in the English classrooms on bringing out student creativity. That's something that we really prioritize around here. We want to ignite that in our students. We want to empower that in our students. And I feel like this conversation around learning how to focus, learning how to engage deeply in something is pretty relevant to this idea of finding your own creativity and developing it. Can we talk about that a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. I think when it comes to using flow to sort of tap into your creativity, one of the things that is most helpful is choice. And we've talked a lot about, over the years in education about, giving students choices and, giving student voice, letting them have input in what they're doing and that sort of thing. But what I've noticed, and I discovered this from my own practice, is that I'm able to really find my flow and tap into my creativity more when I have a bunch of different tasks that all need to be done, but I can go in the order that I want to do them in.
Hmm.
So, today I may have these 5 things on my list and I can choose the one that I feel like doing right now. Then maybe I'll take a break and I'll come back and do something else. And I might decide, actually, I just don't think I'm in the right headspace for that. I think if I start fresh tomorrow morning, I'm going to have a lot more creative ideas. I'm going to be able to um, just focus my attention a little more. I've done a lot of focused work today, and now I need to do something that is maybe more shallow tasks. So maybe I'll move something from tomorrow's list onto today's list. So maybe I'll catch up on this, sort of lower level mundane task and then save the more, deep work or creative work for tomorrow morning. And that has been so energizing for me because now I'm not forcing myself to get things done. And there's two things that set you up for success in this area. One is you have to know you have to have a bunch of different tasks, right? So this means that we're not just dripping things out to students. Do this, now do this, now do this. And this is a skill that is obviously something that is developmentally you're going to have to learn it over time, grow it over time, increase it over time. But that's really the ideal state of where we want to get kids, where we can give them multiple things that they have done before and they know how to do, so it doesn't feel overwhelming. And say, okay, you can go in any order that you want to and you can move things around. And if you're not in the right headspace to focus on this kind of work today, if today is not a good day for you to write, then maybe this is a day for you to go back and edit an older piece. Or maybe this is a day for you to brainstorm some different, vocabulary words that you want to use for something. Or maybe this is a day in which you research for the next thing that you're going to be writing about. So understanding these different types of tasks that need to be done and being able to choose them according to what is going to be easiest for you in that moment to find flow is really useful. So you need to be able to know what to do. And you also have to have a little bit of runway. So if you're right up on a deadline for something, you're going to have to just force yourself to do whatever needs to be done because it's got to be done today. So when we're thinking about helping their kids be able to utilize these different options, we have to be able to tell them, okay, this is due on Friday. It's not due at the end of the class period. And these are the different tasks that are going to be involved. And we're going to take a little bit of class time every single day to work toward this goal so that we're all done by Friday. And maybe you're not working in the same order as someone else. That's okay. And maybe some days you get more done than other days. Maybe there's a day where you're really tired, or you had an argument with someone that you care about and you're not able to focus. That's going to be okay because this isn't due till Friday. Do a lower level task on that day and save your deep work for the next day. As long as we can all get to this goal by this extended deadline, that gives us space. It gives us an opportunity to work with our natural moods, to work with these natural tendencies towards flow, um, and to be able to seize those serendipitous moments of creativity. So many times I have found that, I have a choice between forcing myself to just get it done or waiting until I'm in a more expansive headspace. And if I can wait until I'm in that headspace, I'm able to produce so much better and it's so much faster too. And so allowing myself that, I found the more that I allow myself, the more I trust myself. I trust that that creative mood will come because I practiced it. It's a skill. I've trained those. I've carved out those neuro pathways in my brain. I've trained myself to think in that way, and I know I'll be able to come back to it. It's just a matter of making sure that I'm getting other things done in the meantime. So that's I think one of the most important things you can do is make sure that kids have a little bit longer of a runway on tasks. They have a variety of tasks to choose from, and that they know how to work with their different moods so that they can choose tasks that really select the type of thinking that they are best at in that moment, and understanding how to ride out those waves of like, today it's hard to concentrate. Today I'm totally in my flow. Let's go. Let's do it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I relate to so many of the things you said for my own work. Like I I definitely have like 2 or 3 hours on most work days where I'm in like a really concentrated creative mode doing the first couple of really deeper level work tasks on my list, and then I move away from that into more just I need to do this every day. It doesn't take that long. It doesn't take that much concentration. I already used my concentration. And the idea of kids learning how to do that, that process that took me many, many years to figure out is so inspiring. It's so nice to imagine, a 12-year-old or a 14-year-old being able to recognize, hey, I'm not in my focused creative state right now, but I could edit this draft and, study these vocabulary words. And then tomorrow, I think when I have first period English, that I could really work on, my short story or something. That is just such a mature attitude toward work for a student. And I feel like it would reap so many benefits for them to be practicing that at a young age.
Yes, Betsy, like this was something I had to discover myself as an adult.
Yeah, for
And I
sure.
w I wish that I had learned that. And it was something that I didn't really work on until I was an entrepreneur too, because as a teacher, a lot of your time is so structured. You don't get to really experiment with it. When I think about the way the school day is set up, kids are expected to do deep work and focus the entire day. I
Right.
can't do that. Like 1 o'clock in the
Yeah.
afternoon, most days, there is no way I'm doing deep work or creative work. You want me to be creative at like 1:30 in the afternoon? It's not happening. So just thinking about, obviously we can't just, snap our fingers and restructure the entire process of school and the school day. But we could think about, within the class period that we have with students, how can we offer more choice and work with their creative moods a little bit more?
Yeah, and I think there are a lot of learning structures that we talk about on this podcast already a fair bit that fit with this. I think project based learning fits with it well. I think Genius Hour. I think a lot of bigger creative projects involve many different types of steps. And if a student wasn't feeling like they could create a video that day, they could email an expert and draft up their interview questions and stuff. And that's very much like what my work day is like. And it sounds like your
Yes.
work day. And for me, like it's just been hugely beneficial. I find that after breakfast, I kind of get into my coffee shop and start on my list where I've put like the most creative thing at the top. And it's like I blink and 2.5 hours have passed. And when I come out of that and I like try to stand up and my knees aren't really working, I just barely notice the time has passed. And when that's over, I kind of like know I'm going to move on to other more chill things. But I've gotten so much done in that one block.
Yes.
It's very interesting. Okay, well, I'm taking us on a tangent into my life. I wanted to finish with just kind of asking you for yourself. Is there like a certain time, is there a certain type of task that brings flow on for you? And what do you do to kind of get back to it when it's not working, as it will surely sometimes be for our students?
So my schedule is actually a lot like yours, Betsy. Is like I have you think of it as your most creative task, which actually I kind of like that framing. I think I might use that. I've been thinking about, what is the thing that requires the most concentration, like my deep work. And when I say deep work, by the way, for those who don't know, I'm referring to Cal Newport's research. If you've not read his book on deep work, incredibly powerful. He also has a new book out called Slow Productivity that I'm really excited to get into. I've heard great things about.
Cool.
Um, so I think of that as like sort of my deep work time, my most creative task, and then doing the lower level things later. One sort of interesting thing that I have been experimenting with, this is going to sound very weird, but I have a mini trampoline, and using that trampoline just for like a couple minutes in between tasks has done amazing things for my creativity. It literally shakes everything loose. Like any kind of there's a lot of research around how movement helps with creative thought, right? So
Yeah.
not only am I getting that movement and that activity, and I'm getting my heart rate up, I'm releasing any tension that's in my body. There's a lymphatic drain. It's balance practice. Like there's so many good benefits, and the connection between the mind and the body is so super powerful. And that has been the easiest way. It's just like this, $100 trampoline that I got on Amazon. It folds up and goes like underneath the couch when I'm done. And I do that when I feel stuck, when I'm like, I don't know what to do from here. I will go get on the trampoline for a couple of minutes and just like bounce everything out, walk into the kitchen, get a, drink of water or fresh cup of coffee or something and come back. And it really just frees me up creatively. It's been amazing.
Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. I love the idea of a little trampoline in every classroom, and students can just go over and,
Oh
like,
my
shake out
gosh.
their stress in between work sessions.
I don't know how you would make that not distracting, but that would be so amazing. Oh my
It
gosh.
really would, it really would. I love the idea of, like, one by every desk, honestly, just
That's cool.
30 trampolines. Well, Angela, this has been super fun. Thank you for coming on. I know teachers are gonna wanna go deeper on this with you. There's so much more that you've done. Where can they go to sort of dive deeper into focus and flow with you?
So I have a website called findingflowsolutions.com. And that's where I showcase a curriculum that I've created around this because I really wanted teachers to have something that is ready to use and no prep, that has like the slides where you're introducing kids to these ideas, you're guiding them through the activities. The student journal is already ready for them to reflect. I didn't want teachers to feel like, okay, I have to learn all this myself and then teach it to students. I think this is something we learn alongside our students. And so if you wait until you have this mastered to teach kids about it, you'll never teach it, right? It's something that we want to say, "Hey, I'm working on this. I notice that it's difficult for me to get motivated and sometimes I don't want to do my work. And I know that's hard for you all too. Let's try this together and let's talk about how it goes. Let's see if it's useful and let's see how this experiment goes." So there's a curriculum for middle school and a curriculum for high school that there's different units on metacognition, on creativity, on self-directed learning, and it's really designed to scaffold all of this instruction over time. And they're really short lessons, like 15 minutes, so it doesn't take up a whole lot of class time. So I have that available, and the unit on flow theory is free to download. So it's a 5 lesson unit. There's one for middle school, one for high school that will introduce your students to Mihai Csikszentmihalyi's work and help them sort of explore how to find their flow, what to do when they can't find their flow, how to redirect themselves, and all that kind of stuff. So that's there. And then my main website is truthforteachers.com, where you can find my podcast. We have a writers collective where K 12 teachers are sharing what's working for them right now in the classroom. As well as courses, books. I have all kinds of awesome stuff there. So, truthforteachers.com, that's the main hub where you can find everything, including finding flow solutions.
Thanks so much for joining Angela and me today to talk about flow and focus in our students' lives. Remember, you can visit the show notes at nowsparkcreativity.com or through your podcast player to learn more about Angela's work and follow the links that we mentioned during the show. Until next time, take care of yourself and stay creative.